Bakhtiar when you are watching A News. Now let's take a look at today's top stories. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff is in Moscow meeting with Vladimir Putin for peace talks. The White House Defense War Secretary Pete Hegseth over strike that killed survivors of an alleged drug boat. And floods across Southeast Asia have killed more than 1,000 people and left hundreds missing. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived in Moscow for talks with President Vladimir Putin, where he is expected to present Washington's latest proposal to end the war in Ukraine. Russian media say he was received at Vnukovo Airport by senior negotiator Kirill Dmitriev before heading into the city. The meeting is set to focus on the revised U.S.-Ukraine framework discussed in recent rounds of diplomacy talks that will determine whether negotiations can move toward a formal peace process. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says the alliance cannot afford complacency as global threats continue to evolve, as NATO foreign ministers will gather tomorrow at alliance headquarters ahead of the NATO summit in Ankara this July. Rutte said that allies must maintain momentum on defense spending, capability upgrades and support for Ukraine, warning that security challenges are growing, not fading.
As we begin to look ahead to our next summit in Turkey, we will examine the evolving threats and challenges to our security, including from Russia, and how we are progressing on the crucial decisions leaders made in The Hague. Allies agreed to invest 5% of GDP on defense, including 3.5% on core defense spending, in support of men and women of our armed forces, as well as to provide all they need to protect us: aircraft, tanks, ships and drones, as well as cyber and space capability.
Belgian authorities carried out searches at the College of Europe in Bruges and the European External Action Service in Brussels over suspected fraud. The investigation is led by the European Public Prosecutor's Office, and 3 suspects were detained. The federal police carried out searches at the offices and homes of several suspects, supported by the European Anti-Fraud Office. The case concerns the EU Diplomatic Academy, a 9-month training program for young diplomats awarded to the College of Europe in 2021-2022. Investigators suspect the college or its representatives may have had advanced knowledge of the tender. The probe is still underway. According to Politico, former EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini and senior diplomat Stefano Zannino were taken into custody following the raids.
We can confirm that the police was today at the AS buildings, and this is part of the ongoing investigation of the activities that took place before in the previous mandate. And there is nothing more we can provide you with, because there is now an ongoing investigation happening.
And there is an ongoing investigation, and once and if more can be disclosed, we will be doing so.
Thousands of people rallied in the Bulgarian capital Sofia and several other cities on Monday, protesting against the 2026 budget plan. It's the first drafted in euros before the European Union member country adopts the common currency on the 1st of January.
Tens of thousands of protesters showed their anger in front of the Bulgarian National Assembly in central Sofia on Monday against a draft proposal for the 2026 budget. The Bulgarian government is expected to propose amendments this week. The demonstrators say they're against the plans to hike social security contributions and taxes on dividends to finance higher spending, as well as state corruption. Police used pepper spray to disperse the protesters after clashes broke out.
So there are two main reasons. So one of them is that people are really fed up with the lies. And there were a number of lies that were related to the budget that we discussed today. And the second reason is that people that govern today, they're characterized with a lot of arrogance, with a lot of brutal force that they use to impose their views, including the budgets, but not only the budget.
I think that the people who do not deserve to be called elected representatives, for me personally, have crossed many red lines. First with the budget, second with the decisions they vote on every day in Parliament, and the way they trample on laws, procedures, and consider themselves unpunished.
Authorities say at least 10 people were arrested and that 2 officers were injured. The demonstrations come as Bulgaria prepares to adopt the euro on the 1st of January. The president of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, warned last month that inflation may rise when the country joins the eurozone.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has warned that China poses national security threats to Britain. However, he has defended his government's decision to deepen engagement with Beijing. He says that closer business ties are in the national interest. The concerns come after relations between the two countries have strained over accusations of spying by Beijing. Speaking to business leaders in London on Monday, Starmer said Britain can pursue trade with China while still safeguarding its own security.
A country that poses real national security threats to the United Kingdom. With all that in mind, the absence of engagement is just staggering. A dereliction of duty. Because it means that, unlike our allies, we have not been standing up for our interests. Well, no more. It's time for a serious approach, to reject the simplistic binary choice, neither golden age nor ice age, and recognise the plain fact that you can work and trade with a country while still protecting yourself.
Washington defends the actions of a U.S. admiral at the center of deadly operations in the Caribbean. The White House says Frank Bradley was within the law when he ordered multiple strikes on an alleged Venezuelan drug boat. It comes as the United States steps up its military pressure in waters near Venezuela and Colombia. Here is more.
The White House says U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth approved a Navy admiral's decision to strike a Venezuelan boat that was believed to be carrying illegal drugs. Hegseth praised the admiral and called him an American hero. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said the admiral also ordered a second strike and that he had the legal right to do so.
President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made it clear that presidentially designated narco-terrorist groups are subject to lethal targeting in accordance with the laws of war. With respect to the strikes in question on September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
Since September, the U.S. military has carried out at least 19 strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean and Pacific, killing more than 80 people. President Donald Trump met with his national security team on Monday to discuss military options and other ways to increase pressure.
According to reports here in Washington, during a recent call with President Trump, Maduro offered to leave Venezuela, but only under the condition that he and his family receive total amnesty from any prosecution in the future, and for that all sanctions to be immediately removed. President Trump dismissed Maduro's counteroffer, and the possibility for a direct clash has now intensified even more. The Trump administration has said that it does not recognize Maduro as the legitimate president in Venezuela.
It's unclear if he can still make a fresh proposal involving safe passage. Maduro's administration has requested another call with Trump, according to 3 sources. Maduro denies any involvement in the accusations of alleged drug trafficking and on Monday swore absolute loyalty to the Venezuelan people. During recent weeks, the US has moved an aircraft carrier task force and thousands of troops into the Caribbean, raising concerns it may be preparing for military action. On Saturday, President Trump declared Venezuela's airspace closed to all airlines. Critics from both parties want to examine the legality of the strikes, while the Trump administration says they are acts of self-defense to stop illicit drugs entering the United States.
Israelis are rallying against the Netanyahu pardon outside the president's residence following a request from the prime minister. Demonstrators demanded Isaac Herzog reject Benjamin Netanyahu's bid for a presidential pardon in his ongoing corruption trial.
Protesters are rallying outside Israeli President Isaac Herzog's residence on Tuesday, demanding that Herzog dismiss Netanyahu's bid for a presidential pardon.
We cannot allow for Netanyahu to be pardoned. Yitzhak Herzog, the president, has to step up, represent the country and the people. Let Netanyahu know that not only will he not be pardoned, but that we will not accept what he's doing to the country, to the police, to the judiciary. He's ruining this country and we won't accept it.
Netanyahu is facing charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust in a trial which began in 2020. Netanyahu asked Herzog on Sunday for a pardon in his El corruption trial, arguing that criminal proceedings were hindering his ability to govern and a pardon would be good for Israel. His corruption trial began following a conviction in 2019, has experienced multiple delays due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the Hamas October 7th attack. The trial involves 3 criminal cases. He denies the charges and has pleaded not guilty.
Devastating floods across Southeast Asia have killed more than 1,000 people and left hundreds missing. Indonesia, Sri Lanka and Thailand are among the hardest hit, with rescue teams racing to reach stranded families.
Rescue and recovery operations are underway across South and Southeast Asia after a week of extreme weather left more than 1,100 people dead and hundreds missing in Sri Lanka, Indonesia and Thailand. In Indonesia, at least 604 people have been killed on Sumatra Island after a rare tropical storm triggered landslides and severe flooding. More than 28,000 homes were damaged and 1.5 million people affected, according to the Disaster Management Agency. President Prabowo Subianto visited the worst-hit areas on Monday, pledging to rebuild roads, homes and critical infrastructure. Over in Sri Lanka, officials say more than 330 people have died and more than 370 are still missing after Cyclone Ditwa swept across all 25 districts, causing the island's worst flooding in a decade. Nearly 200,000 people are sheltering in temporary centres.
We need to rebuild Sri Lanka. We need to escape from this disaster and once again help the people to stand up. It is for this purpose that the President set up the Essential Services Commission.
Authorities say power, water and communications are gradually being restored, though some flood-hit communities report receiving limited aid.
In the night, things were normal. By next morning, everything was underwater, including our house. 7 of us, including children, took refuge on the top floor.
In Thailand, at least 176 people were killed in historic flooding across the south, with the commercial hub Hat Yai among the worst affected. The government is facing criticism over what many see as a slow and disorganised emergency response. International partners, including Canada, say they are monitoring the situation, while local communities across the region have begun raising funds for relief efforts.
The first apostolic journey of Pope Leo XIV comes to an end as the pontiff wraps up his Beirut trip with a prayer gathering on Tuesday. once again highlighting the need for peace and coexistence in the Middle East.
During the Pope's first trip to the country, he visited several holy sites, including the tomb of Saint Charbel, where he prayed for peace in Lebanon and beyond. He also attended an ecumenical and interfaith gathering at Beirut's Martyrs Square, highlighting dialogue and unity among different religions. During his speech there, he expressed hope for peace across the Middle East.
For many years, and especially in recent times, the eyes of the world have been fixed on the Middle East, the cradle of the Abrahamic religions, observing the arduous journey and the unceasing quest for the precious gift of peace. At times, humanity looks at the Middle East with a sense of trepidation and disheartenment in the face of such complex and long-standing conflicts.
Pope Leo met with both Muslim and Christian communities, stressing the importance of peace and coexistence. Describing his visit as a mission of peace, he urged Lebanon's leaders to continue their efforts following last year's devastating conflict between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah, as well as ongoing Israeli strikes.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the shifting diplomatic landscape as Washington engages Moscow. And EU leaders warn of being sidelined. See you shortly.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Gandhi. One important note to clear. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we're recording the shade of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back to A News. The diplomatic landscape is shifting as U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff prepares to meet President Putin in Moscow, just as Russia claims the capture of Pokrovsk, potentially opening a path toward Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Meanwhile, European leaders are scrambling with Macron and Zelensky in active talks, and Kaja Kallas warning that crucial negotiations are happening without the EU at the table. Joining us now from Lisbon, Portugal, is political analyst Anna Evans. Anna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Bakhtiar.
Anna, how significant is Steve Witkoff's meeting with President Vladimir Putin at this moment in the conflict? And do you see this visit as part of a broader U.S. diplomatic strategy, or is it more of a standalone outreach?
Well, It is very significant, especially if we consider that Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who is the son-in-law of President Trump, both of them were essential in achieving the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. So although they are being criticized, those, the two, both Witkoff and Kushner, are criticized by some as lacking diplomatic expertise. In reality, they have been really fundamental for the Middle East peace process. And of course, they are also fundamental here in Ukraine's potential peace process. And Russia is, of course, maintaining its maximalist discourse in the same way that all parties are. But we need to be very comprehensively analytical when we look at this, because your question, Bakhtiar, makes all sense. If we look around the globe, we see, for example, that the United States is intensifying dramatically its actions in the Caribbean versus Venezuela. Well, we know that Venezuela is one of Russia's global allies. So the two countries have cooperated since the US imposed sanctions on Venezuela. So Venezuela is an ally of Russia and Iran and China, and all of them are, rivals and enemies of the US and great concerns for US foreign policy. So I would say that the Trump administration is carrying out a very transversal foreign policy initiative that is trying to isolate Russia on several fronts. And, it has isolated Russia more than it used to be, for example, in Central Asia, with the very recent C5+1 meetings with Central Asian leaders in the White House. And so we can see that the US is doing a very well-thought, structured, anti-Russia foreign policy. And so we cannot just look at Ukraine as an isolated case or at this very specific stage in the negotiations, because they are part of a global initiative that the Trump administration is carrying out in versus Russia.
Anna, Russia claims it has captured Pokrovsk. How strategically important is this city in the Donetsk region?
Well, Bakhtiar, Russia has been attacking the city for quite a while, at least 1.5 years. The city has been a very strategic aim for Russia. Although it is only, it used to be around 60,000 people, it is strategically situated in terms of being a transport hub, and a transit hub with rails and roads that connect to other Ukrainian cities. So it being considered a hub, it has a symbolic significance. So we do not know for sure exactly in tactical terms and in military terms on the field, how much of the city is really controlled, because we know that unfortunately, wars have a second war, which is the information war, running at the same time. So we hear the Russian side saying that they have actually conquered the city. We hear the Ukrainian side saying that the Russians have not completely conquered the city, and so that the conflict is going. I'm not really very sure in terms of information how much of strategic terms and in terms of controlling all the transportation networks this really will represent, because there is a lot of counter information going on. And so it will take a bit more time before we really understand how the situation in the field actually is.
Anna, Macron and Zelensky have been intensifying their diplomatic engagement. What does that signal about Europe's priorities right now?
Well, you know, Europe is trying always to present itself as an entity, a collective entity with a collective security strategy. And this strategy is always presented as being, you know, really very much centered on Ukraine since the full-scale invasion Russia started in Ukraine. Now, the problem is that although the European leaders are always portraying themselves, and Macron included, of course, Macron always portrays himself as a protagonist in international affairs, but the problem is that Europe really lacks the way, you know, the weight that it would want to actually present at the world stage. And so, notwithstanding the protests, you know, by European leaders and the narratives that Europe must be at the front of the peace process, you know, the reality is that Europe has not created the conditions to have a united foreign policy and the capacity to really matter as much as a great power like the US can affect, you know, a war cause. So we've seen this in the Middle East. We see this in, you know, in Ukraine. Unfortunately, Europe has not reached a power status, you know, the status where it can really, you know, present a force, a collective force, a lobbying force that can make a trajectory of conflict go one way or other. So that's how I analyze, you know, the European stance. Is a lot of ado, but with little effect, a lot of noise, you know, a lot of narratives, but in the end, it is not the real power weight that will decide which way things will go.
Then, Anna, how do you assess the current level of coordination among European states regarding Ukraine?
Well, there is coordination at a sufficient level. We know that there are always the exceptions, you know, Hungary being one exception, but the issue for Europe is that if a bloc, a regional bloc, wants to be a world power, that regional bloc needs to institutionally build a set of conditions about elements of collective power that Europe has not been able to reach. So in defense and military terms, you know, Europe is not a collective power, is not a defense bloc. And you know, in economic terms, it is, you know, it is highly coordinated, but in terms of what really makes a great military power with a voice at the global level, Europe, unfortunately, is really far from reaching that, you know, that target. And so that's what really matters. You know, we can talk a lot about coordination, about states sending weapons or, you know, creating sanctions that Europe as a whole, you know, with exceptions, is implementing. But, you know, 3 years and a half are gone, and it is very obvious that this is insufficient, you know, to really operate as a collective bloc, a collective great power, which Europe unfortunately is not.
Anna, could the Witkoff and Putin meeting signal any shift in US-Russia dynamics moving forward?
You know, Witkoff, as I mentioned previously, is a great weight currently in diplomatic terms because of his success on the Middle East. And you know, we need to envision what is happening as part of a sequence of negotiations. So, and in this sequence of negotiations, we do not need, in fact, it is not useful to have all parties present at all stages of the negotiation. And we know that, there was the initial 28-item plan, which was, not very well accepted by Europe because Europe was not part of the initial, draft for negotiations, but it didn't need to be because this is a sequence. And in the last couple of days in Florida, there has been a team of Ukrainian negotiators that have been streamlining the plan. And so after the plan has been streamlined in Florida and previously in Geneva, now it is time to meet again with the Russian side and see if the Russian side is willing to accept the refined or revised version of the plan. And here there's a big question mark. Will Russia accept, the new revised plan, which is not as favorable to Russia? And, will Russia accept that there will need to be very strong security guarantees on Ukraine's side? Because as an analyst, in my view, the key note and, the central aspect of this peace process are security guarantees, because Russia will never admit that Ukraine will be part of NATO. So the US needs to formulate a set of security guarantees that substitute for NATO. And as for territorial concessions, although, people tend to say that that's, a choke point, I would say that inevitably, unfortunately for Ukraine, there is no way Russia will, end the war without territorial concessions after fighting for 3.5 years and losing so many men. And so it is, security guarantees that are really, really the backbone of what will happen in the future in terms of a sustainable ceasefire. Unfortunately, the European notion of a just ceasefire, there is no justice when there is a war, an invasion, without capitulation of the invader, in this case, without military capitulation for Russia. There's no justice in this kind of diplomatic end. There will never be. And so what really matters most of all are the security guarantees and how much they will prevent any future incursions by Russia, which preoccupy not only Ukraine, but former Russian republics, because we know that Russia tends, to be patient and to use human resources and time and wait, to expand more square meters of territory. We know that. So security guarantees are really at the heart of this peace negotiation.
Anna Evans, thank you very much for talking to A News and for joining us from Lisbon. We truly appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thanks. After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Stay tuned.
The world never sleeps, but who's ready to wake you up with all you need to know about what is happening across the globe and in the region?
We are. Daybreak is live every morning, bringing you a complete wrap-up of the stories from overnight and all the news already happening in the world.
The biggest global headlines, the key regional developments, the must-read stories shaping the day.
We show them, we discuss them, we guide you through their meaning. We give you the news and a first look at the key headlines.
I'm Nadia Jani.
And I'm Lou Brown.
Join us, it's Daybreak here at A News.
Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization has launched a 5-day joint anti-terrorism exercise in Iran's northwest province of East Azerbaijan under the command of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. Our Turay Shiralilo has more.
Iran's northwest Shabestar County in East Azerbaijan province is hosting the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Sahand 2025 anti-terrorism drills, which run through Thursday. Brigadier General Vali Ma'dani officially launched the exercise on Tuesday, saying it aims to strengthen coordination among SCO members in counter-terrorism operations. The IRGC's Ground Forces Operation Deputy said that SCO member states Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Russia, Pakistan, Kyrgyzstan, China, Kazakhstan, Iran, India, and Belarus are participating in the drills, and that representatives of neighboring countries are participating as guest observers. Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi said hosting the exercise reflects Iran's efforts to contribute to a new regional security framework. He noted that Iran's long experience in combating terrorism can help harmonize practices among SCO members. Iran became a full member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in 2023, which is a Eurasian political, economic, and international security body of 10 member states. As a regional organization, it focuses on political, economic, security, and counterterrorism operation. Turay Shiralilo, Tehran, A News.
Following a meeting with Tbilisi Mayor Kaja Kaladze in Budapest, Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó made a statement, saying that Hungary will not allow the European Union to impose sanctions on Georgian leaders. Szijjártó spoke about Hungary's strong ties with Tbilisi and the Georgian Dream Party, saying that Hungary understood what it meant to swim against the current and not fully aligned with the liberal mainstream. He also invited Mayor Kaladze to share his experience in managing Tbilisi with the mayor of Budapest, and even to deliver lectures highlighting the close cooperation between the two cities. The Georgian government and the BBC are now locked in a high-stakes confrontation after a BBC investigation alleged the use of a World War I-era chemical agent during last year's protests. Georgian Dream denies the claims and says it will take the broadcaster to international court. Our Nini Nikolashvili has more.
Georgia's ruling party, Georgian Dream, says it will pursue legal action against the BBC, accusing the broadcaster of making baseless allegations about the authorities' response to last year's anti-government protests. The dispute centers on a BBC investigation suggesting that a chemical agent known as Kamit, originally developed during World War I, may have been used against demonstrators. Protesters reported symptoms such as burning eyes, severe coughing and vomiting, with some effects reportedly lasting for weeks. The BBC says its reporting is based on interviews with chemical weapons experts, medical professionals and members of Georgia's special forces. Georgian Dreams rejects the findings, calling the investigation politically motivated and claiming that the BBC ignored detailed information provided by the government before publication. Former Interior Minister Vakhtang Gomolauri confirmed that substances referenced in BBC report had been purchased and used by the Interior Ministry, but only until 2012. He said they have not been acquired or deployed since then, though they were also not formally investigated or destroyed. Opposition groups are calling for an international inquiry, saying an internal investigation would lack credibility. International officials have begun to react as well. A spokesperson for the European Commission said that if the allegations prove credible, they would be unacceptable and urged a prompt, transparent investigation. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
A Russian-flagged tanker traveling from Russia to Georgia says it was attacked off Turkey's coast, but its 13 crew members were unharmed. Turkey's maritime authorities said on Tuesday. The Mid-Volga II continued towards Sinop without requesting assistance, with the Turkish media suggesting a kamikaze drone may have been involved. Ankara says it has contacted the relevant parties, including Ukrainian authorities, and the incident comes just days after Ukrainian naval drones struck 2 Russia-bound tankers in the Black Sea. Talks between Afghanistan and Pakistan have once again ended without progress. The latest round held in Saudi Arabia's capital Riyadh wrapped up with both sides sticking firmly to their long-held positions. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more details from Kabul.
Reports emerging from Pakistani media suggest that recent talks between Afghanistan and Pakistan in Riyadh have ended without any breakthrough. The negotiations held behind closed doors in the Saudi capital reportedly saw both sides remain entrenched in their long-standing positions, with little willingness to compromise. However, it's important to note that neither Pakistan nor Afghanistan has officially confirmed or denied that these talks took place, adding another layer of uncertainty to the diplomatic picture. This comes after earlier efforts mediated by Qatar and Turkey also failed to produce results. Prior discussions in Istanbul ended in a similar deadlock, with Afghanistan attributing the failure to what it described as Pakistan's unreasonable demands. Tensions between the two neighbors have risen sharply in recent months. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan of allowing the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, the TTP, to operate from its territory, an allegation Afghanistan firmly denies, stressing that it does not permit any group to use its soil against another country. Meanwhile, regional players including Russia and Iran have indicated they are prepared to step in as mediators, should both sides agree to broader diplomatic engagement. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Tajikistan is in the international spotlight following recent attacks on Chinese citizens along its border with Afghanistan. President Rahmon has condemned the killings, and Afghanistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs under the Taliban government has also denounced the attacks. Our correspondent in Central Asia has the details.
Tensions are rising in Tajikistan after 5 Chinese citizens were killed along the border with Afghanistan. These 2 incidents happened within a single week and sent a serious signal to Dushanbe. President Emomali Rahmon has publicly called on security forces to immediately strengthen border control. Heads of security and law enforcement agencies have also been instructed to take effective measures to prevent similar incidents. Tajik authorities say the attacks were illegal and provocative actions from the Afghan side. The first incident took place on the night of November 26 when unknown attackers from Afghanistan struck a gold mining facility in the Shamsuddin Shuhin area. 3 Chinese workers were killed and another was seriously injured. And 4 days later, a second attack occurred in the Darvaz district in eastern Tajikistan, killing 2 Chinese road construction workers. Chinese authorities have urged their citizens to leave border areas and take maximum safety measures. Tajikistan and Afghanistan share a long border of over 1,300 kilometers, and most of it runs along rivers, while about 190 kilometers is land. And Tajikistan borders 4 northeastern Afghan provinces. This area has long been considered high risk. Against this backdrop, Dushanbe in Beijing now face a difficult challenge, protecting foreign investment and citizens while avoiding an escalation of tensions in one of Central Asia's most unstable regions. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss Saudi Arabia's unsuccessful push to ease Pakistan-Afghanistan tensions as talks in Riyadh ended without any breakthrough. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Saudi Arabia's latest attempt to ease tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan has ended without progress. Talks in Riyadh closed late Sunday with both sides refusing to shift positions on cross-border terrorism and stalled trade ties, leaving the diplomatic track uncertain despite Riyadh's continued efforts. Today we are joined by Obaidullah Bahir, academic and analyst joining us from Kabul. Mr. Bahir, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me on.
Mr. Bahir, what's your initial assessment of why the Riyadh talks failed to produce even a minor breakthrough?
Well, I feel like there are two important elements to successful negotiations. One is an intent to negotiate, and it's not enough to sit at the table. There has to be a real deep desire to arrive at a negotiated outcome. And the second part is to have a unity of vision with regards to expectations for outcomes of the negotiating round. I feel like both these things are missing on the Pakistani side. They have said in their public rhetoric that they are refusing to negotiate, that they will not sit with the Afghan Taliban anymore, and that they are in a state of war, but somehow they do managed to arrive at the Saudi discussions after apparently saying no to Turkey intervention when President Erdogan offered to send a high-level delegation to Pakistan. Allegedly, Pakistan refused to have that delegation come in. So it just appears like there's very little intent to go towards a negotiated outcome, and there is a lack of a unity of vision with regards to what they want from the negotiations. They don't know how they want to solve the TTP question. It's just the army and their generals that are pushing for an outcome that is unrealistic, which is expecting Afghanistan to take care of the TTP problem. Note that they're not asking them to stop funding them or stop harboring them. They're asking them to subdue them, which means to fight against them, which means to make an enemy out of them. And that doesn't make sense for the Taliban to do. Why fight the enemy that is created by the circumstances and policies of your neighbor, and it is based inside your neighbor's country? Why make it your problem?
Mr. Bahir, to what extent is cross-border terrorism still the core obstacle in these negotiations?
Look, there's a rational gap in the accusations coming from Islamabad. Let's take what they're saying to be true. That the TTP, which is Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, a group that's been operating from within Pakistan for more than 20 years now, that they're all based in Afghanistan, that they're attacking from there. Pakistan has built a 2,600-kilometer fence across the Durand Line, which separates Pakistan and Afghanistan today. Why is that fence not working? There are checkpoints across the 2,600 kilometers. There are thousands of soldiers deployed. How are they not managing to stop TTP attacks if they're all based inside Afghanistan? Also, Pakistan has continuously bombed different locations within Afghanistan, claiming that they are targeting TTP. Yet there hasn't been a single TTP casualty. So it's clear that those allegations are bogus. Yes, we have refugees who moved into Afghanistan from the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is the province adjacent to the Durand Line, to the de facto border. They fled the war, fled our army prosecution in Pakistan, and settled in Afghanistan. And now the Pakistani establishment accuses those refugees of being TTP fighters, despite the Taliban in Afghanistan disarming those refugees, moving them away from the Durand Line, making sure that no military operations are conducted from within Afghanistan through those refugees. Yet nothing seems to be enough. So in such a situation where you're going to be blamed nonetheless, why try to cooperate and give something that you cannot realistically give, because the TTP is not here and you do not want to make the TTP your own national problem.
So what leverage, if any, does Saudi Arabia have to push both sides toward compromise?
I think all regional countries that have offered to mediate, whether it was Turkey, whether it was Iran, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and China hesitantly, all those countries understand what a vacuum or unstable Afghanistan means for the region and the globe. And they feel like the current stable Afghanistan is not a threat security-wise to them, and they would much rather find economic opportunity in the country. I think for Saudi Arabia, it felt like sometimes these things become a rivalry between the Arabs themselves, the Saudi and the Qatari rivalry, and I hope that this is not the case. But they are closely allied with the Pakistani regime. It might have been on their behest that they tried to intervene and mediate. However, unless the thinking changes from within Pakistan and a realistic demand is put or request is put on the table, which the Taliban can help with. The Taliban have previously mediated between the TTP and the Pakistani regime, and they can do that again. But that can only happen when Pakistan has a clear idea of what it wants to do with the TTP problem. If it wants to fight it, then it can keep fighting it and not drag Afghanistan into their mess, but it clearly doesn't seem to be working. TTP is gaining ground, gaining momentum, and the solution is negotiation and talks, both with the TTP inside Pakistan and with the Afghan government. And for that to happen, there has to be a change in attitude from within Pakistan, which does not seem to be forthcoming.
So, Mr. Bahir, what do you think? Can external actors such as China and the United States or Gulf states realistically shift the dynamics?
I think that they can put pressure on Pakistan to negotiate or maintain a ceasefire. But ultimately, the change in mindset has to come from within Pakistan. I mean, this current conflict isn't the only problem in Pakistan right now. They're facing major political upheavals, whether it is with the largest political party inside the country, whether it is with their army taking over at least fully now under God's open sun of the political structure. and their struggles with separatist movements all over the country. It seems like they have to get their house in order before we can expect them to have a clearer vision with regards to Afghanistan. So these pressures can only work so much. We're at a very fickle ceasefire, and we hope we can get out of it towards something more mutually beneficial. But with the current attitude from Pakistan, there is little hope for that.
Obaidullah Bahir, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us from Kabul. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me on.
You're up to date with World News for the Hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News for more.